Thank you. Thank you so much, all of you who joined us today. It's nice to have you on this webinar to discuss 10 ways to recharge your creative agencies going into 2024. I'm Ruben Shub, marketing manager at Workamajig. Definitely nice to see some familiar names. I met some of you guys at our most recent boot camp in October. Welcome to all of you who joined us. In our webinar today, we're going to discuss how you can support your teams during the end of the year crunch time and how to get your teams geared up for an awesome 2024. We have 3 great speakers lined up for you guys today. We have Jonathan Baker from Punctuation. We have Steve Guberman from Agency Outside. And we have Rhonda Burt from Eisenberg Group. We're going to discuss, what's our goal with the webinar today? So I think, as we all know, that the end of the year is definitely crunch time for all of us. It brings some burnout and employee fatigue. And we're here today to learn some tips from our experts and how we could mitigate these risks and support our users and support our employees to be in control and to have the tools they need to finish up 2023 on a positive note and be ready to jump into 2024. In a recent study from Limeade, they found that workplace stress in the US can cost companies $90 billion annually. 91% of employees say that unmanaged stress and frustration negatively affects the quality of their work. So this is pretty fascinating to me. What I found very interesting, that on the list of the 5 professions that have the most employee fatigue, that design workers and sales teams are 4 and 5 on that list. So we have some awesome speakers lined up today, and I'm gonna introduce them, and we're gonna let them share what we could do to mitigate these risks. Jonathan, you're up first. Jonathan Baker. Jonathan is a business advisor that focuses in the creative and digital space. Jonathan's going to share with us today about the importance of building a team-based, healthy internal culture. Jonathan, you're up.
All right, thank you. So we advise with small to mid-sized marketing services firms, and as part of that work, we end up talking to a lot of principals and agency staff. So first I want to address this kind of idea that we keep coming up when people talk about their agency culture and how it's so great because they're a family. And when we hear that word, family, that's actually a trigger for us to say, uh-oh, there's something going wrong with this culture, because your culture should actually not represent a family. It should represent a team. And I will tell you why. We'll talk about why your company shouldn't be a family first, and then we'll cover why your company should function more as a team. First, and I hope my father and mother are not watching this webinar, your company should not be a family because families are dysfunctional. Everyone has that weird uncle, right? That always shows up at the wrong time. Second, families are impossible to get out of. This one's a little bit more serious. So there's lots of safety in families, right? And so when people say that they are part of a family, I think what they're implying is that they're a part of some place that can never get rid of them, because there's this idea of unconditional love. But unconditional love should not apply to someone who is toxic, not doing their job, subpar performer. Third, in a family, the black sheep often gets all of the attention. However, in a company, you as a founder, manager, have limited time and resources, right? And it's very easy to let your time and energy go towards the squeaky wheels, the underperformers, to try to coach them into being average performers, instead of taking that same time and energy coaching up your high performers. And so in a family, you often see the dynamic where too much emphasis gets placed on the bottom performers. Finally, why your company should not be a family. Families instill too much loyalty. Family, you think about kind of The Sopranos, right? And that level of loyalty is actually uh, very bad for a company and for the founders in particular, because it can start to create this cycle of yes men, yes women. You're not getting a true read on things because everyone, is just blindly loyal. So we know now, hopefully, why your company shouldn't be a family. Why should they be a team? First, teams are built around a common goal. Uh, Profit is the most obvious choice here, right? As a business, you need profit to survive. But beyond profit, your purpose as a company. Um, Teams are built, they are not born, right? And so you have choice. Uh, Second, different seasons require different types of players. So I have also built a couple successful businesses, and one thing I've noticed is that at the beginning, when you're first starting out, usually what you need is some scrappy folks, Jack and Jills of all trades, who can do a little bit of everything, always raise their hand. But as you grow, as you add layers of management and processes, what you need is more specialists. You need people who are really good at that one thing, even if that one thing is something like managing. And so there can be phases of the business where a certain player is right for the beginning, but maybe not for the seasons where you're growing. Teams are also constantly tinkering with their rosters, right? Playing into this. And I'll just ask one question because I asked myself this question. Have you ever regretted letting someone go too early? The answer is almost always no. And oftentimes we let them go too late. The way you play is also a stylistic choice. And so cultural fit matters. And I think it goes without saying, but players are choosing to be on the team as much as you are choosing to have them on the team, right? So you're building a team, but it's not like you have unlimited pick of everyone. You have to be a good coach. You have to be someone that teammates want to play for. And so the idea of being a team instead of a family actually helps keep you as a manager, owner, principal honest as well, because you have to be someone that people want to perform for. So I'm open up with this idea of team versus family because what energizes your staff most of all is knowing that you care about them. And knowing that you care about them includes trying to build the best possible place for them. And that means, unfortunately, sometimes making some harder choices, right? But that ends up being better in the long run. The second thing I want to talk about today is living by your core values. Everyone's got a set of core values, right? And we all use them in different ways. And personally, I think they're great. I think you do need a set of core values. But how do you incorporate them into the daily operations of your business? So I want to give you some kind of tangible ideas on how to do that next year. First, incorporate them into your people processes. So into recruiting and interviewing, and then into performance reviews. Those are the two areas where core values aren't always represented well, but they're two areas where you have very tangible touch points and kind of meaningful ways to impact potential employees or employees. So practically, want to list out a few things you can do to live out your core values. One is to define each core value, right? So if your core value is fight for excellence, what does that actually mean? In written words, what does that mean? And what doesn't it mean? Sometimes defining it in terms of what it doesn't mean can help you shape your feelings about that core value. Second, develop a set of interview questions that help unpack each core value. And as you're doing that, define what a good answer looks like so that when you are giving these interview questions to others, they have some idea of what they're looking for. When you're evaluating candidates, you want anyone who is interviewing to know the importance that you place on cultural fit, right? So that cannot be something that you downplay. You, as a leader, need to make sure that you are always stressing the importance of cultural fit. And in performance reviews, as I mentioned, you can place an emphasis on cultural dimensions. It's good to have, a template, right, for performance reviews. What I've seen work well in the past is you've got kind of a performance-based section and a culture-based section, and you can talk about those two discretely. This also is helpful when you're thinking about someone who's a really high performer, but somehow just doesn't fit in. And it gives you kind of a way to talk to them about how this might not be the best place for them. Next, incorporate your core values into peer reviews. So when folks are interviewing or reviewing each other, which I think should happen once a year, oftentimes it slides to once every 2 years, if I'm honest. Make sure that you are incorporating core values so that the teammates can help think through how their other teammates are living out particular values. And then use all of this information to quickly weed out bad cultural fits. A bad cultural fit can be extremely toxic and will slowly kind of bleed your culture dry. And so staying on top of that, I think, is one thing that actually folks really love to see the leaders do, and keeps them energized. One final thing here on core values. We often see this particular core value pop up, and that's something like act like a founder, or be entrepreneurial, or make it happen. And I want to caution people about using this as a core value. As you're starting a business, it makes total sense, and core values often take the form of the founders of the agency, right? This is kind of how core values come into being. However, the larger you are, the more process you actually need as an agency. And so this idea of kind of acting like a founder can be counterproductive. If you have everyone acting like a founder, you have no one acting like a founder. And not only that, recognize that you cannot expect your team to be you. They didn't start a business. You started a business, right? You're the one who needs to act like a founder. Having your team take some initiative is great, but try not to overplay the idea of being too entrepreneurial with your staff. The last thing I would like to talk about today is what your team wants from you. So we do, part of our flagship offering is these anonymized surveys on process, team culture, management, that we get from every team member and every principal. So over the years, over the past 25 years or so, we've amassed tens of thousands of these. And as we analyze these, we start to see patterns emerge pretty quickly. And we've got 6 things here that we see time and time again when we ask the question, what would you like to see ownership doing more of or less of? So that's the question. What would you like to see ownership doing more or less of? This is asked of people who are non-owners. And the 6 things that we see are, number 1, they want you to step away from the day-to-day. This is something that I know that you need to do, right? Everyone's like, I need to be working on the business, not in the business. What a great phrase. And it and it is true. That's what we need to do. But I think principals often feel like they don't have the team in a good enough place to where they can step back. You don't know unless you try. And what we see is that I think employees are ready before principals are ready. So know that you are probably taking on too much day to day, and energizing your team means stepping back from that. The second thing we see is that they want you to invest in culture, comma, even in remote first environments. So these days, everyone's remote, not everyone, but lots of us are remote. And, the idea of the office ping pong table and office snacks and impromptu happy hours is kind of gone, right? But we need our leaders to be thinking proactively about what it means to invest in culture in this remote first environment. We recommend that if you're not spending money on rent in a building, you take that same amount of money, you spend it on culture building. That could be 1 or 2 trips a year where everyone comes together. It could be, smaller kind of individualized trips where you're sending people to do professional development together. Often it involves travel because culture still, you need that kind of in-person interaction. Third, they want you to spend more time on marketing and business development. By and large, your teams can handle the doing, the process, and frankly, you're probably pretty bad at the process. What they want you to do is to be kind of the external arm of the agency. Fourth, they want you to have the difficult conversations. This could be a difficult conversation with a client that needs to be fired. Nothing energizes a staff more than firing a client. This could be a difficult conversation with a staff member. But you are the leader, you are the coach, you are the one that needs to have these conversations. And what we see when we ask this question in surveys is people actually asking us to ask the principals to have conversations. Fifth, they want you to invest in process. And I just mentioned you're probably bad at process. And that's true, but process needs someone pushing it forward, right? And so even if you're bad at it, you need to be the ringleader to say, okay, we need a process around this. Let's form a committee. Don't put too many people on the committee, but form a committee, come up with a process, and then there needs to be kind of strength in terms of following the process, and that includes you, unfortunately. And last, they want a vision of the future. So it's not enough for you to shoot for 10% growth year over year, right? What are you guys trying to build, and how can you make it inspirational and aspirational for the team? They want to believe that they're doing more than just work. And with that, I will pass it back.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. That was awesome. I really took a lot out of that. Yeah, a message for you guys. If you have any questions for any of the panelists, just drop it into the chat after our speakers, we have some time set aside for some Q&A. Next up, we have Steve Guberman. Steve's going to talk to us a little bit about finding, retaining, and motivating creative talent. Steve, you're up.
Thanks. Appreciate that, Jonathan. Thanks for setting the stage. And thanks to Workamajig for inviting me to share some experiences that I've learned through both running and selling my agency and now coaching agency owners through Agency Outside. This portion is about nurturing creative excellence, but really it's about finding, retaining, and motivating creative talent in your teams. There's a subtitle, and that is that the overwork culture is dead. Rest in peace. I think there's I wanted to subtitle this mostly because I've seen a shift in this direction, as I hope we all have over the past few years, with the shift to remote working and working from anywhere. More and more value has been placed on work-life balance than ever before. And personally, I'm all for it. I think that the toxicity of normalizing the overwork culture that we've had in this industry for far too long has just, I think it's tired, it's old, it's killing everybody. And for what Jonathan mentioned, profitability, and that's, the ultimate bottom line in dollar, but there's more to it than that. And so if we're placing value on doing good work and getting better results and higher ROAS and stronger creative and more awards and bigger teams, then how is that really supposed to be achieved? By burning out the staff that's doing the work, that's supposed to be bringing in the clients, that's paying the bills. The cycle is broken. And to kind of mirror what Jonathan said, that the snacks in the break room, they're not compensating for 20-hour work days and an overload of client accounts. And after all, the snacks aren't there because, for the most part, agencies aren't there in person. So the team is the greatest investment. And if you look at any P&L from a shop, most likely their salary, payroll, benefits, employment taxes, employment insurance, that's their greatest investment. And really that's where the magic happens. And you can ask any leader to tell you that. So finding, hiring, training new team members, it's got to be an investment. And keeping them is in everybody's best interest, and not just keeping them on staff, but keeping them happy, keeping them healthy. It's vital to their success as well as the success of the work that they're going to do for the clients. So in line with how we recharge our teams for 2024, I think we need to start with rebalancing what the expectations are of the teams. And the teams can be, just kind of to define it, one person team using a team of freelancers to 100 plus teams of in-house, everything is there under one quote unquote roof. But what we expect of them, how we treat them, and how we support their growth as individuals and as a collective team. I also mirror, family is toxic, so I use the word team. So taking the word recharge really to mean so many things, but I'll take the perspective of, how leadership should be more intentional in taking care of the team members. So firstly, finding creative talent. HubSpot reported that more than 85% of all jobs are filled through networking. I've found this to be true. I don't have the true metrics for that, but I'll believe their numbers. And sure, you can spend hours flipping through portfolios on Dribbble or any other portfolio website, or you can leverage the network that you've spent your career building. I've known the phrase "your network is your net worth." Apparently, Porter Gale was the first person to say that, and so I'll give her the credit for it. But to me, that's again proven invaluable. It's one of the most valuable things that I think we have. And so, are you using your network to grow your team and find valuable assets? Simply posting to your own social network, getting referrals from people who you already know, like, and trust, that can send you qualified leads. Typically, it's the best route. Quick side story. Was at a New Jersey ad club networking event the other night, and a young, enthusiastic new marketer approached me and I think he might have, somebody sent him over to talk. He was at a networking event because he's trying to break into the marketing space. And my first gut reaction was to tell him, no, don't go, run, do something else, become a lawyer, doctor, accountant, whatever. But he's enthusiastically learning about HubSpot and Google Analytics certifications. And while we were standing there, he literally jumped on my LinkedIn account, connected with me, and booked a call because he wanted to pick my brain a little bit more. So we had a call yesterday, and after getting to know him a little bit, I said that I would absolutely vouch for him to anybody in my network looking for a young marketer because of how enthusiastic and curious he is and how rare it is to see that. So with little effort, he's expanded his network and thus his net worth exponentially. I have no doubt that he'll land a job and do pretty well. So things to consider when you're looking for new talent for your team. First is, have you defined the seat that you're looking to fill? And whether you have the right people in the right seats that are currently on your team. And often when let's say a junior designer or a strategist or a marketer leaves, we're quick to say we have to replace that same shape hole with the same shape peg. And I don't think that's the right move. Often it's taking inventory of the team that you have left. What needs do they have? Maybe your lines of services have shifted since your team was previously defined. So make sure you're hiring for the right seat. How intriguing are your job descriptions? Can you be more creative in your writing? Is it really, stale paint? After all, we're marketers, so write it in a way that is attractive. How strong is your employer brand represented on your website and social channels? I think that it's a pretty safe bet to say that most of the traffic that hits an agency website, the majority of that traffic is going to the About Us page to learn your process, your team, your culture, read some bios, see the social pics from last year's bowling event or the local nonprofit that your team supports and you volunteer at. And those things can happen even in a remote space. But for potential candidates, that's really valuable because they want to know they're joining a team where things are happening, where employees matter, where culture is driven by how much are we giving back and what are we doing with our spare time and, even happy hours, things like that. So, if you're not posting those kinds of things, start doing it now. In a year, you'll look back and wish you had started now. So, start representing your employer brand in what you stand for. Again, not just the core values that are hanging on the wall in the quote unquote office, but how is your team actually living it? There's things that can be done internally that can't be shown on social, but can still be displayed in ways of here's what we stand for and here's how we exemplify that. How collaborative is your interview process? I think it's a very simple and effective way to demonstrate the type of employer brand that an agency has, simply by having an interview process or phase put in place where some of your team members are interviewing potential candidates. And after all, your team is so focused on culture, you've already turned them into raving fans and they're evangelists for the agency. So why not allow them to share that with a potential candidate to talk about what life is really like at the agency? And then finally, on the topic of finding talent, I won't ever say not to use a recruiter, partly because I have friends who are recruiters and they do a great job. But I will say never use that easy apply button feature thing on LinkedIn and Indeed or any of these other platforms. Because if you're going to use that easy apply route, you may as well put your money into a recruiter. Because if it's that easy to just hit apply, the time that you waste flipping through, reading through resumes that don't apply, people that are just simply, finding an account manager role and hitting the button, they're not qualified and they're not taking the time to see if they're qualified. Not that necessarily we should make the application process more difficult, but you can certainly make it more intentional and thought-provoking and weeding out people from the beginning. An example that I love doing, I think this is kind of fun and tricky, is down in the bottom of the job description, you can put like a note that says, in order, send your resume and portfolio and use the word dolphin in the subject line. And if you don't get the word dolphin in the subject line, hit delete, because it's an attention to detail thing. And so if you want a project manager who's got really strong attention to detail and they haven't done that, there's, to me, a good way to weed out some potential candidates. So retaining creative talent, as the slide says. So now that you've got the most talented, awesome team, what are you doing to keep them? Again, keeping them from burning out, taking their newly honed skills elsewhere. You've invested some time and money into them, and they're an important cog in your finely tuned machine, and it's expensive to replace them. So the secret is really there is no way to keep them from going. When it's time for them to go, they're going to leave. They're going to move on to what their next career move is, and hopefully it's on great terms because of the relationship that they have with you and with the team, and you'll be proud to see them move on. I was always taught, and I've always tried to live this when I build teams, treat them in such a way that you help them grow so that they can leave, but also treat them in such a way that they won't want to leave. So what are you doing to earn your team members' loyalty? In some cases, it's as simple as providing them the space to be heard, giving them a voice in the type of work that they're doing, that they want to do, what they want to grow into in the agency, giving them a voice in the types of clients that you chase after and win, because after all, that's what you're fully focused on, not the day-to-day, but building the business and biz dev. Give them a voice in the process that they follow to do their work and find success. There's a lot more when I, as an employee, get to champion what this process looks like versus it being dictated down to me that says, these are the steps I'll follow to, build a brand or post a social tweet or whatever. So allowing them to contribute to all of this is really essential to their security, their sense of loyalty, and again, their sense of ownership and autonomy. In other cases, it's vital that they see a path for growth in the ranks of the agency. And frankly, even a small team, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, that size can also provide that pathway. In some cases, a smaller team provides more opportunity for ownership than growth on a larger team. So, giving them the vision of that pathway is really important. Right, not yet. A couple more points on this, and then we'll move on to the motivation section. So boredom is very much a challenge that agencies face with some of their talented, creative employees. And not in the sense that they're sitting around twiddling their thumbs. Clearly, that's probably not the challenge, but more in the sense of the kind of work that they're doing and the kind of accounts that they're working on and the industries that they're working with. Younger employees, for example, they're highly motivated by working with social justice brands, B certified organizations, brands with causes that they believe in, versus, let's say, real estate or commercial real estate or fintech or brands in industries where it's far less exciting. So if you can find business for them to work on that's more in line with their values and passions, that goes a long way. Spend time having a workshop with your team and asking them to contribute to your Dream 100 lists of brands that they want to work with in the coming year. Hopefully those workshops are happening now as we hit the end of the year. But a compelling employer brand goes, far beyond good snacks in the break room. I think that went out the window, like I said, during COVID. So with agencies being remote, obviously there's no value there. And so how else are we building motivational, culture positive, driven shops that attract top talent? Ask your team what's important to them and then deliver on it. It's a far less investment than replacing your team and all that goes along with that. Finally, last point, and then you can advance the slide. Finally, benchmarking their performance, being intentional about reviews and growth plans, as I previously said, and Jonathan also mentioned, it's pretty vital to an employee. Dare I say, especially the generation newer to the workplace, where they're learning how to be employees and they often need to be ensured more about a good job that they're doing, and not that we need to take extra effort to bolster their, boost their self-esteem, but that's often where it's defined, self-esteem and self-worth. And so these performance reviews are vital. And if there's no feedback, how are they going to know how they're doing? And the other side of that coin is that you want to squeeze the most juice from the fruit without hurting it, obviously. So constructive feedback that is provided in a review is vital to improving employee performance. But either way, it all leads to growth and stronger team members and eventually leaders. That's what we're building. So finally, motivating culture, motivating creative talent. So,
All right, Steve, I'm just going to jump in with a time check. We have like 3 minutes left because I want to leave some time for Q&A at the end.
You got it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. So real quick, autonomy and ownership is a huge motivator. Recognizing and rewarding creativity is massive, and that can be anything from bonuses, raises to, again, team outings, things like that. I think awards are, go a really long way. They're also great for getting a team together that's remote. I've seen this recently, teams getting together for the first time at an award show, and then sending the junior designer up to get the award. That goes a really long way. Sure, financial compensation is a pretty simple motivator, but it's not always the strongest. Again, ask questions, ask what's important to them. The review process is often kind of quickly felt as a negative thing. That email comes across and it's like, dun, dun, dun. Oh no, I have a employee review, but turn it into a positive thing. And I guess finally on the note of motivating, one of the best ways to support your team and add new team members. I'm sure raises and bonuses are great, but if you can add employees that are going to alleviate workload, I think that goes a really long way. And then I guess we can jump just real quick to identifying and overcoming some of those challenges. Just some questions to ask on the leadership level. Have you been fostering the culture of openness and providing a space that allows your team to effectively communicate what challenges they have? And then are you listening and responding in supportive ways? Are you identifying and addressing common obstacles that might hinder their creativity? Do they have the right tools, the right lessons, the right coaching? Are you providing them with support that they need? So final conclusion, TLDR, invest in your team. The team that you have, hopefully it's the team that you want. Don't take them for granted. Be intentional about it. Listen, but really listen, like you can listen to Jimmy, listen, provide the support that they need to invest in your most valuable asset. And that ROI will beat out any ad campaign ROI for your best client. So thank you very much. Turn it back over to you, Ruben.
Thank you so much, Steve. That was awesome. I really appreciate it. All right, next up we have Rhonda Burt. Rhonda is actually a client, user of ours, user of Workamajig. Rhonda is the VP of Finance at Eisenberg. She's got extensive experience in the creative industry. Rhonda is going to share with us about freeing your agency from the rigid processes. Rhonda, you're up whenever you're ready.
Okay, so what I'd like to talk about is taking your end of year and using that time to, the way to focus and help your people is sometimes through technology. People, as Jonathan and Steve were talking about, are a lot more difficult to change, but one of the ways to help people is sometimes through our tech. Lots of times as your company evolves and it changes, your systems and your processes haven't evolved and changed with your company. So your databases, your systems, your tools can look like a mess. And that can really make it frustrating for your people and your users to get their work done because they're constantly compensating and they're altering how they have to work and taking more time to get their job done. And while that may not seem like a big deal, it actually is because it makes it frustrating for them to do their work. So at the end of the year is a great time to take a step back. It's something that we're doing this year and looking at how things are set up, how they're working, how they're running, and altering our setup, how things are run, to clean things up and make things more efficient for our users. And making it match to the way our company's actually running right now. Makes everybody happier in the long run. Next slide. So as you do that, what's actually working? So as the leader in your company, you should have a pulse on what people actually like and what's actually working. So what of your systems, what of your tools, what is it that they like and what actually works? Example, Workamajig. Of your schedules, your estimates, what is it that they're doing that actually works? Maybe one group's works and one group's doesn't. You should have a pulse on that to see what needs to be changed, what needs to be updated, who you need to bring on your team to actually work and decide what you're going to be changing for this year. Next slide. What do they hate and what do they love? You know, everything with everybody is a love-hate relationship, right? So the key is figuring out what do they love, right? And improve on that and expand that into the rest of the agency. And then what do they hate that you need to improve on? Things that they hate are things that take too long, they're cumbersome. What are they taking out and dumping into Excel and having to change? Lots of times I find that some of our staff here will take a very common report that's easy to get to, and then they'll dump it into Excel and then they'll go manipulate it and they'll rinse and repeat that every week for a meeting instead of us just creating something or going to a different report that they don't have to do that with. Or they're copying, pasting something into an email instead of us just generating the report into an email. So what is it about that? And the only way to know these things is to spend time with them, right? If there's someone in your company that is a key to one of your systems, work with them and have them help you expand that out into the rest of your company. Next slide. Okay. So one of the things that will hold you back on your system and your processes is your data. So sometimes your data is so outdated that it makes it difficult to update your process. So end of year is another great time to go in and look and see if you need to update the way your data has been managed. Again, this is something that people shy away from because it's a lot of work. Are the way your, let's say, clients being classified, does it make sense? Do you need to group things different? Are the metrics the way you need them to be for the way you're running your reporting for your leadership? Do you need to classify your projects differently for, let's say, revenue reporting? Are you using the custom fields maybe in Workamajig? There's a lot of tools, not just in Workamajig, but other tools to be able to do mass updates. To get your data to where you need to be reporting instead of going in and doing updates or pivot tables in Excel and creating all this duplicate work. We constantly update our companies every year based on the way our management and leadership guides the companies, but we don't often go back and update our systems, be it Workamajig or anything else, to match into the way we're running the businesses. It makes it frustrating because what people do behind the scenes is they just compensate for all that, but it adds time and hours onto their day-to-day work. So if we don't go fix it, it's just going to make them more frustrated. When you do these things, though, be careful that you're not updating your old data into making your prior year's data not usable. Next slide. Customizations. So your software is much like a coffee bar. You can take and customize most software nowadays to be whatever it is you need it to be. So take advantage of that. Don't just work with what you're given by any piece of software. Most of it you can customize into what your company needs it to be, make it work for you and what everyone wants it to be. When someone's manually changing things, go in, customize it, make it fit for what you need it to be. Workamajig is a great example. You have all of your custom views, reports, exports. I've taken most of ours and customized them to the point that you don't have to take it to Excel to do anything manual to it. If you just take the time to tell me what you want, then I can make it so people don't have to do all those things. You just have to take the time investment up front. Next slide. Go direct to the data. This one takes some work to get people to have their buy-in. They're used to prepping reports and screens for meetings. But we're now at the point where we run a lot of our things like our sales meeting or our project management meetings direct from the system. Huge difference to be able to run it off live data. Because it's great. If something's not up to date, call it out in the middle of the meeting and it gets updated right there. So we're constantly looking at things live versus after the fact. It takes a lot of that pressure to have a report ready and done for a meeting out versus just having the data updated all the time. May not seem like a big deal, but it kind of is, because then you don't have to prep ahead for that big sales meeting, right? You just have to keep your data up to date in general. If your data is up to date, then you're always ready for the meeting, right? You're not prepping the data for the meeting ahead of time. Next slide. Real-time problem solving. We try to use a lot of tech here to make our lives easier. One of the great ones is we implemented Okta this year. We had a lot of people getting locked out of Workamajig and other tools. So once we implemented Okta, it's great. That's one password, kind of rules them all to be able to get into Workamajig and everything else. It was a big point of frustration for all of our users. So it took some time to implement, but now that we've done that, our users are a lot happier because they only have to remember one password and they have a screen with all of their tools on it. The other thing, our payroll system sends them a reminder about getting their time in every week so their paycheck can hit. Sounds kind of crazy, but payroll telling them to do their time entry has made our time entry better. We've constantly adjusting, I should say, who gets the time email reminders. So who bugs them about their time entry. So it's constantly adjusting and managing the technology solutions to try to improve everyone's day-to-day functioning. Little tweaks, but it's having that pulse on the technology to try to help people. And if we can shave an hour or two off their day or off their work week, that's more time they can either spend on billable work or with their families, or not having to do that grind that Steve was talking about. So anyway, try to think out of the box and offer different solutions to our staff to make things a little bit easier. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. That was awesome. Really thank you to all our speakers. I got a lot out of it tonight. I'm gonna open up the floor for some Q&A. We had some questions coming over here. We'll start with them. If anybody else wants to add in a question, feel free to drop it in the Q&A box. I'm gonna read off the question and we're gonna pass it around to all three of our speakers today to get to it. So the first question we have over here is, my culture has been unstable due to shrinking budgets from marketing agencies this year. I think we're all dealing with shrinking budgets. What do you recommend we do to stem the tides of fear connected to budget cuts? We're going to start with Jonathan.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I would say first, make sure you have the right size staff. So I don't know how big these budget cuts have been. If you're overstaffed, that will scare your team more than being the right size. I think being, as honest as you can with them about how you're thinking about the future, what your plan is to work through it is also helpful. Your team is not dumb. They're obviously very smart and they're thinking through this stuff as well. And I think they'd value you kind of just, even if you have fears, sharing those openly.
Nice, thank you. All right, Steve, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, very similarly, I think it's important to be transparent. Hopefully leadership sees this coming and it's not a surprise. Hopefully there's cash reserves to bolster the team, but I'd rather see an agency let somebody go with a few months severance than drag them along and hopefully, reignite a biz dev fury, because the reality is when an employee's let go, it's often works out for the best. So, keep the team intact as opposed to, scaring everybody by not being transparent up front about things.
Nice, thank you. Rhonda, any thoughts on that?
I like the answer about giving them a good severance package and being transparent.
Nice. Yes, honesty is the way to go. Thank you, guys. All right, next up, would you suggest doing a survey to get the love, hate, working, not working information from the team? Or do you find in-person conversations are better?
Can you read that one again, please?
Sure. This was actually directed towards Rhonda Shear. Would you suggest doing a survey to get the love, hates, working, not working information from the team? Or do you find in-person conversations are better?
Both can work. It depends on the size of the agency. I would probably start with a survey and then go do some in-person conversations based on the survey.
All right, sounds good. Any of you other two want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I would agree that it depends on the size of the agency. In a team of 3 or 4, have a conversation, sit down and have a meal and make it informal. Or bring in a company like Punctuation to perform an anonymous survey where people can be a little bit more honest on a larger team and get some better data points out of it.
All right, awesome. All right, so we're gonna move on. There always has to be one AI question. So here we are. Where do you think businesses will be expecting marketing agencies to use generative AI in their service offerings?
Man, if I had the answer to that, I think I could make a lot of money. I think in general, people or companies want agencies to use AI to help solve their problems, not to help make their own tasks shorter. right? And so I think a lot of the things we think about with AI are how does it cut down on our copywriting time, or how does it cut down on our kind of shortcut our design process. But clients don't care about that stuff. Clients, AI is only important to the extent that it helps improve the client experience.
Nice. Steve, any thoughts on that one?
I guess two supporting thoughts. One is I think from an account management and account-based marketing standpoint, and educating clients on what AI can do for them, what it can do for their customers and their clients, continues to position the agency as an expert and a vital solution provider for them. So I think that's an important thing for agencies to be thinking about is, how are they presenting new ideas to expand accounts? But then also how are agencies bridging that gap between robots and humans? And I don't mean robots taking over the world, but robots that are feeding data and supporting customer journeys and things like that. The new SERPs and search results and things like that are all being driven by robot generated content, but they're also trying to avoid providing content that's created by robots. And so, how are agencies kind of bridging that gap, I think is really important now.
Nice, thank you. Rhonda, any thoughts on that?
We're really looking at AI right now. The problem with it from a visual perspective is using copyrighted content to create the images for AI. So once everything gets past that and you're using non-copyrighted images, or you're able to use ones from a bank of a client's images, that's going to be the big hurdle to jump over. But being able to use AI to further your workplace will be huge. It's like everything's like just about there, but we're very focused on AI and where it's going to take everything. We actually have a couple of people working on it now, like how we can use it for our internal systems, where it's going in the creative industry and moving across images. We have lots of our clients focused on it, whether we can use it, can't use it. It's definitely going to change our industry.
All right, awesome. Now for a more technical question. Besides ROI, what should agencies care about when analyzing the value of their software purchases? Jonathan, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I'm trying to think through kind of my own experience here too. One is adoption levels, and if it's something that you can actually get the team excited about, because a software tool that isn't used by everyone or isn't used to its fullest is usually a waste of time and money.
For me, it's the support. Who you're working with, like on the support team, right? Like, what's their support level like? Are you going to be just ignored when you ask for help? So that's like one of the things with Workamajig. Two, if you do need a consultant, are they available? What are they like? Both of those are all great with Workamajig. You have a great consulting network available. Other software systems that we use for some things, like it's just, the support's just not there. So you can have the greatest software in the world, but if you can't get anybody to help you with it, then it's really not useful. Doesn't matter how great it is when you need help.
Nice, I like that. Steve, any thoughts for us?
I guess I would just add that, like, how you define the R in ROI on a software investment has a number of variables or a number of definitions. So sure, am I replacing one with another to save $10 per seat per month? That's one thing. but am I creating greater efficiencies, or is there an ease of use or ease of adoption, like Jonathan said, or ease of support, like Rhonda said? And so don't just evaluate it dollar for dollar, because I think there's a bigger picture than just the dollar for dollar ROI.
Nice. All right, great. Thank you. Next up, how do I motivate my employees to better manage project budgets and ensure projects consistently align within project scope?
You just have to work with them a lot. I mean, there's really no better answer than that. You actually have to just work with them a lot and pay attention to it a lot.
Nice.
There's no easy answer for that.
Yeah, I think it's part of culture, and culture isn't just, rah, 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 and, we're awesome, but it's, we can't keep the lights on and add more people if we don't have money. And here's what money means. And, most people in an agency didn't go to business school. Most of them may not even gone to school. You know what I mean? And so teaching them a little bit about what does it mean if we go over budget, and how are budgets defined, and having that level of transparency on how an agency operates to give them some insight into when we go, when we're 10% above budget or ahead of budget, here's what that means for us consistently. When we're 10% over budget or 20% over budget, what does that mean for us as a team? And just educating the team, and then finding out why. Like there's a reason why everything's going over budget. Things are either priced incorrectly, or project managers or account managers are not being made aware of burn rates on projects, and so there's a process problem there.
So sometimes I have weekly or monthly meetings on certain projects with them about all that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get into the weeds about it.
Jonathan, any thoughts before we move on to the next question?
I have nothing productive to add.
A joke is good too. Yes. So next up, how would you suggest energizing leadership or principals who are also run down by the reduction in the budgets from clients, layoffs, etc. this year? We're all human, so it's inevitable that a leader would feel the same issue as the lay people in the agency. However, sometimes out of fear and control, leaders go against their core values under duress. How can they get into the new year on the right foot?
I can jump in here. I think leadership can be a really lonely place, particularly during these, times like this, right? When you're run down. And one of the best things you can do is to network with other leaders, so that that you're not alone. You can figure out some best practices from what other folks are doing. You can, maybe share some best practices that you didn't even know were best practices. But getting outside of your own head, getting outside of your firm, kind of picking your head up and networking is, I think, one of the best things you can do.
Nice.
Yeah, I would say, give yourself some grace. Not every agency is going to be a unicorn where it's going to see 20, 30, 40% growth year over year. And there are going to be some dips. Take a look at what happened, do a SWOT analysis. What was in your control? What was out of your control? What can be done differently next year? There's 7 million different agency groups, 4As, FAA, et cetera, or AAF, et cetera, AIGA, ad clubs, blah, blah, blahs. Shameless plug for an agency mastermind group by some agency coach in New Jersey, but surround yourself with people that you can commiserate with, because it's, it is lonely, and you're definitely not alone and unique. So.
Nice, thanks. Rhonda, any thoughts on that?
There's no right or wrong answer in business, right? There's no perfect way of doing anything. You know, who's to say somebody did something right or wrong or against core values? Everybody's human. You can't do everything perfect 100% of the time. Especially right now, right? The economy is going up and down and up and down. You can only make those decisions to try to keep, you know, a lot of people to try and keep their business doors open. They may not make 100% of the right decisions all the time, but if the business is still operating and most people still have their jobs, I mean, then I guess that's not such a bad decision then, right? Like, look at the positive instead of the negative.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. All right, here's one more. Is there one foundational strategy related to the topics discussed today the agency owners should make sure they get right to start 2024?
I missed the beginning of that. I'm sorry.
Sure, let me read it off one more time. Is there one foundational strategy related to the topics discussed today that agency owners should make sure to get right to start 2024?
I don't know if this is a strategy, but I think the idea of intentionality is something to carry forward into 2024. I think coming out of, you know, the COVID years, it's been a lot of reaction. It's been a lot of let's wait and see what happens to us, and then we'll try to flip it around and fix it. But now that we're kind of starting to, you know, see at least a little bit more stability in some areas, I think 2024 is a great year to think about being intentional about where you want to take the agency and taking positive steps towards that.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah, I would probably add to that. I mean, I think that's, you know, really smart, and I think it's, you know, this is the time of year where, you know, and it's timely for this topic in this webinar. Pause, take a look at the state of the agency, do an inventory, and set some like actionable, realistic goals. There's any number of goal setting templates or coaches or videos or podcasts or books. You know, but build a plan and get your team on board with that plan and set the vision and be the visionary of the company and, you know, get that rally cry from the team. But, you know, it's too easy to just roll the calendar over and just keep running the way that, you know, 2023 ran. And it's a great opportunity. This can happen whenever, but it's a great opportunity now to, you know, set a plan in place and chase after it.
Nice.
I think it's about the agency as a whole, right? It's not just about one person or leadership or the staff or the profitability or, you know, like you said, the founders. It's about everything all together, right? That's what makes an agency. So you have to think of all those things together to make an agency run and make it run well. It has to make, you have to think of all of them and place them all together, not just one piece. Keep all those things in mind and you can make an agency run well, not just one component of it. It's the whole thing together.
Nice. I like that. Thank you so much for your answers. And thank you for the questions out there. They were great too. Do you guys have any last thoughts you want to share before we wrap up this meeting today?
No, I think, I mean, we've covered a lot. Hopefully you took away 2 or 3 morsels out of all of this. I think we can call it a win if that's true.
Yes, definitely. We really did cover a lot today. We're going to follow this up with an infographic with some of the points that we covered today. At least for me, there was a lot of information there, a lot of great information. And yeah, we're going to break that down. We're going to send it in a follow-up email. I'm actually going to attach to that a client testimonial that I'm working on from Ed, a resource manager at EA Agencies. It's actually really relevant to this. I'm going to wrap that up and send that out to you about assigning like proper tasks to work to employees. I think that would be helpful also. Just a heads up on your way out, Zoom's going to ask you for a quick survey. If you could survey how this webinar went, I'd love to hear some feedback from you. And also, if you like this level of engagement with our experts and some of our agencies, make sure that you sign up for our emails. We are pretty excited to be launching many more of these webinars starting QA of 2024. And we hope to see you there. Thank you guys for attending, and thank you so much to our speakers who took the time to share some great thoughts with us today. Thank you.